So thank you so much for your time, President Khuri. I really appreciate it. So my first question for you is, AUB has been in the press recently, and it seems that while the university has survived wars and missile attacks, it doesn't look like it will survive coronavirus. What are your thoughts on that?
No, so Colleen, let me correct that. The university will survive coronavirus. It will survive for another 154 years, at which point I might consider retirement and then passing it on to the next one. The university will survive. That's not what's the question. And I made it crystal clear in my letter. The question is, what type of AUB will survive? For 30 years, we've built a remarkably gifted, effective research faculty, research mission, along with teaching service and everything. Now Lebanon is collapsing economically, and the world is entering into probably the deepest recession and the first true depression since the late 1920s and 1930s. And how did the world come out of that depression? With a world war, God forbid, okay? AUB will survive. The question is, what type of AUB will survive? Who will we be able to bring in? Our goal has been to be more intellectually elite, more inclusive than we are economically elite. We could survive as a pure private university, which just takes kids who can pay, but that's the wrong answer. The wrong answer is for us to say, okay, we're going to take the kids of the wealthy and pay our faculty in dollars and cone down just to the staff that we need, not do research, making it a great teaching school. That's the wrong answer. Why? Because we would survive, but Lebanon and the Arab world would not survive. I think we've proven we're hardier than any Lebanese state. They blew up this building. I'm in College Hall, and AUB survived. A president was killed, another was kidnapped, and AUB survived. So unequivocally, AUB will survive. I just want to make that crystal clear. Mm-hmm. I did not say AUB will survive or not survive. I said it's existential. And existence isn't only about existing, but about what type of existence, okay? The type of existence is important because the Arab world and the region, all the region, has never needed AUB to thrive more than it has today since its founding, since arguably the First World War. In 1975 to 1990, its survival was important for Lebanon. Now its survival is important for the entire Arab world. There's nothing like us. There's no like-for-like liberal arts institution that really brings the full impact of liberal thought, Western liberal thought, but is open to Eastern thought all the way to China, like AUB. Let's be clear. Lebanon, it's critical. 63% of tier 1 impact publications, top-tier publications, come from this one university, despite the fact that you have 53, and I'm going to be very loose about defining them as university. We have 12 not-for-profit private universities and one public university, and the rest are, they're basically supermarkets, and you buyer beware. So it's critical that AUB not only survive, but thrive in the way that is needed to lead in the region. Otherwise, we'll survive, but the region, the evolution of modern liberal Arab thought will really be seriously at risk. Is that clear?
It is indeed, yes, thank you. So you have hinted that sacrifices need to be made. What might they be? And would they be permanent or merely temporary?
I think temporary salves, such as tying a bleeding wound, generally don't address the fundamental issues. The fundamental issues is that Lebanon's economy is imploding. Some of the seeds of the destruction of this economy go back to its founding 100 years ago, where it empowered religious authorities, the merchant class, and the sectarian warlords out of proportion to the middle class and the independent businesses, and especially the poorer class, okay? So Lebanon has been living beyond its means as a country and citizenship for a while. We've been concerned about this post-war. This was not addressed in Taif. This was not addressed post-war. It's continued to smolder, now it's collapsed. Lebanon is the host in which AUB is enculturated and has deep roots. And Lebanon right now is arguably the only consensual liberal democracy in the region, including Turkey, Israel, the Arab world. Tunisia is becoming one, correct? Mm-hmm. Everything else is a different system than a liberal democracy. It's a dysfunctional democracy. It's riddled with corruption, lack of accountability, but it still is a liberal democracy. That's why it's been a very good host, a critical host for AUB. So what does AUB do when Lebanon implodes? And this is not just an economic storm, it's a perfect storm. It's an economic, social, political, liquidity, egalitarianism storm all at once. Well, we need to be a good role model. We need to be a good global citizen as well as a good local citizen. So the steps that have to be taken have to be long-term, okay? And long-term means restructuring, becoming more efficient, focusing on the things that were outstanding. We have students coming in. Those departments, those academic departments will be preserved. They could be made more efficient, but that requires study, at least a year, in some cases longer. We have reports coming in, almost done, from the provost's office about our graduate programs, how viable they are, do they serve our long-term purpose as part of our pretty much flawless middle states accreditation. But we need to look at those. We need to look at the long-term viability. Are we producing not only citizen leaders for this region, because we have citizens of 96 different countries that attended AUB, that currently attend, are registered. But are we inclusive enough? Are we egalitarian enough? Are we empowering enough? And are we educating them? And I think we have to look very critically at ourselves. What can we afford? What can we not afford? So that we're as efficient, as viable, as focused as possible. It's not just because of Lebanon and the region, because the region with the catastrophic fall in oil prices is also in tailspin, right? But globally, we're seeing the recession, and also in particular, the sectors of higher education and health are really having to redefine themselves very quickly. So we need to redefine ourselves from every level, everything from telemedicine to distance learning to experiential learning. But those who have more, including our students eventually, have to give so those that have less can have dignified lives, whether those are staff, faculty, or our students who are coming from the poorer and middle classes. So these are fundamental restructurings we're talking about the next few years.
So it's essentially restructuring, downsizing, repurposing.
It's repurposing, in some cases downsizing, in some cases increasing investment, doing it in a much smaller budget, admittedly, knowing where our revenues come from and knowing how badly hit the world economy and the local economy, regional economies.
Okay. Now, I want to discuss a bit higher education, as you mentioned. So some people say that the solution is simple, online learning. What do you think about that? Is this the future for higher education, maybe not just in Lebanon, but worldwide? And are the results the same as in person, in your opinion?
They're not the same in the person as in-person education, and exclusively distance learning is not the long-term solution. In my view, the long-term solution is now being tested, not fully, because all we can do right now for safety reasons is distance learning. But in my view, long-term higher education has to evolve much more quickly than it has the last few hundred years, so that it encapsulates in-person learning, instructional learning, we'll call it. And that's not necessarily lectures, because those can be put online. Experiential learning, what do you do with your hands, your mind? What do you go out to explore? Projects in communities, rural and urban, things where you're making a difference potentially as a group with your professor supervising, and that becomes research rich as well. And distance learning. It's got to be a blend of all three. But one of the first things we need to look at is the whole issue of examinations. Do examinations, really tests in the 21st century, do they really assess who the best students are? More important than the best students is, what did they learn? What did they learn? And for that, I think we're going to be completely changing how we assess learning. So learning has to change, but assessment has to change as well. That's my view.
And when you say learning, do you mean tackling different topics, more critical thinking, more emotional intelligence? How do you mean?
Okay, so let's look at how education has been in the Arab world. It's been rote learning, often memorization, and then you spit it out in the exam. That's a failed model. I mean, that's a failed model.
Now, does AUB expect any aid from the Lebanese or American governments at all?
I think AUB has gotten some aid already from the American government with regard to coronavirus, a $2.5 million grant that we applied for, much of which will come here and the rest will be distributed to private hospitals because the American government has made a very clear decision they will not work with the Lebanese Ministry of Health for political reasons. We're not interested in the politics. We'll take the money and help with the medical effort at the private hospital sector, and we have our own ways, not in this but in other areas, of coordinating with the Lebanese government. So far, the Lebanese government has not come forward with any help, unlike 1975 when the Lebanese government came forward with actual physical help. Rashid Karami, when he was in prime minister, in contrast with this prime minister, came forward with an £18 million relief assistance that saved the university from closing. We're in a much better financial situation now than in 1975, but the Lebanese government owes us a lot of money for our health and other areas, more than $150 million, and they have not paid it, and we've had no indication that they plan to pay it. So whether they will pay it or others, we've had no indication. Does that mean we're in a fight with them? Not at all. The Lebanese government tells everyone it's broke, and for years has been putting off paying these amounts. They pay us a fairly small percentage. We understand that they believe that we're wealthy. We're not. Our records are out there for people to see. But whether they do or don't have money, I suspect they don't have a lot of money. But at a minimum, we ask that they commit to not taking more of our money that are not their properties. They're the property of our students, our staff and faculty in Lebanese banks.
Mm. Well, yes, this actually...
We've gotten reassurances there, to be fair, from the finance minister, the Speaker of Parliament, the President of the Republic, but not from the Prime Minister.
So are you expecting any aid or help from your alumni?
We are. We're already starting to see it. You know, when you make such a clear appeal to alumni, that mobilizes things. As of this weekend, more than 300 alumni had committed, small funds, but still meaningful funds. You know, a significant amount, over $60,000, but obviously it'll take much more than that. But we are hopeful that we will get considerable money from our alumni and trustees. And, you know, let's not forget that we made an appeal for scholarships and medical assistance, and we got more than $10 million pledged from our friends, our trustees, and our alumni, in no particular order. So our community has been generous and will continue to be generous. We'll continue to ask them, but at some point we need federal assistance from the two governments, okay? I believe we're more optimistic that we will get some support from the US government currently than we are from the Lebanese government, but I'm hopeful that we'll get assistance from both in addition to our alumni friends. Okay. And of course, you know, it started with, you know, I myself starting to give a substantial portion of my salary, which continues, for student financial aid. And that started in November because we saw the magnitude. You can't ask people to give if you don't give yourself. And that's true of several of our, I believe almost all of our deans, okay, and other senior administrators as well.
Mm. And one of my final questions, I guess, would be, what would Lebanon and the region mean without AUB, in your view?
So that's not going to happen. Okay, so I don't really want to speculate. It's not going to happen. But Lebanon and the region might not be able to survive a much diminished, much more downsized AUB with regard to keeping excellence, freedom of thought, and intellectual impact. No institution contributes more high-quality research per faculty member than AUB. So the answer to that is obvious. The region would be much diminished without the contributions we're making. Were we to pull back and become purely a teaching university or an elite research university, the region needs us to be all that we are and all that we can be, so that there's hope, there's fairness, there's inclusivity. I think we have stellar faculty and staff. We want to keep them here. Very easy for the wealthier universities from the US, Europe, and the Gulf to steal them. That's not going to happen. We need to protect them. We need to give them more, not less. I think it would be a tragedy for a region that's just awash in tragedies if something bad were to happen to reduce us.
Definitely. Are there any final words or comments or a message that you would like to send out?
Sure. I think the message is AUB will be here for a long time. It needs to be here as a thriving institution so that the region has hope. I'm very confident it will be here. In 154 years, it's 154 years old. In 154 years, when I'm ready to retire and pass it on to the best woman and the man, AUB will be here. What type of AUB that'll be here is largely dependent on our region. Before we ask America and Lebanon only, AUB is important for the entire region. Let's face it, it is the Arab world's landmark, top quality, liberal arts research university, okay? Liberal education research university. It's in all of our interests that this institution thrive and grow.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Mr. President. I really appreciate your time. And again, thank you so much for all your time.
Thank you, Kenny. Take good care.